And one of the implementations we did is, in fact, is our second one. We did it and took a record number of orders on the very first day we went live. And one of the site managers actually said, I think this was an easier day with Paradigm on day one than it would have been in our old system. Rarely is what you think you're getting the final product of what you get. Again, in different industries and different experiences, Paradigm probably was closest to advertise in terms of the things that we were going to both have to do and then how it would work once we had implemented it.
All right, so to start off, could you just tell me a little bit about, I guess, the multiple companies that you're a part of, and could you say what your role is at, I guess, these different companies?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the president and CEO of E&A Holdings, which is the parent company for Echols Metal, for A&E Metal, and we have a 50% interest in another Rollformer nearby, all in the Eastern Alabama region. 5 separate companies that we kind of rolled up together at the first of the year. And so as we were preparing for, this roll up, it was obvious that some of the systems that we previously were using, while very good for us, for the last 20 years, we were going to need to have a little bit higher level of capability, some sophistication, and really from a reporting and management perspective, needed to have more data than we previously did. And so as we were preparing for that roll up, we over a series of phases, we did our Paradigm rollout and started with our first company, went on board October 1st, and really in the third quarter, did all the prep work that you would normally imagine that you do. And I'll say that the support was very good. We had evaluated some different software sources out there, coming from an Excel, or basically a very quick and easy to use in terms of taking an order and getting it out the back door process. We wanted to make sure that we could continue that with whatever system we did going forward. And we evaluated a couple other systems. And obviously, Paradigm being a product that was developed by Rollformers for Rollformers made a lot of sense for us. And so in doing our investigation, we determined that was going to be a good fit for us and made that decision to move forward. And really over the course of the second quarter of 2025, did all the work to implement that, and had I would say, a pretty successful rollout October 1st at our first location.
And so I talked about, the systems what you maybe used before Paradigm. Were the different companies using different systems, or were they kind of all on one and you switch them all over to?
The 5 companies that we rolled up the first of the year had already had a lot of integration together, acted and functioned in many ways like a roll up would. And so they all had the same operating system. Fortunately for us, it was a code-based system, which obviously Paradigm is as well. So we didn't have to learn that. And the flow and look and feel of our Excel tool that we had, that was order taking and production based, set us up real well to be able to transition over toward Paradigm.
Great. So you had said, kind of getting into the implementation bit and kind of the transition between the two. You had said there were some things you were kind of looking into or considering with like the different programs. What were some of those questions or maybe concerns that you had about your next ERP system working well or working for what you were looking for?
Yeah, I'd say the number one concern we had was making sure that whatever we did going forward did not detract from our ability to take a customer order and turn it into panels, trim, and accessories out the back door very quickly. We think that's a competitive advantage for us. It's something we put a lot of effort into, really striving to, whether it's 1 square or 40 squares, we're going to try to get that out as quickly as possible. And so whatever ERP system that we went to, we couldn't see delays in our ability to satisfy our customers.
And are there any, just off the top of your head, are there any features of Paradigm that really work well with regards to that? Anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say so, because we don't make every panel profile at every location. And so again, we had already been operating pretty cohesively at these 5 locations previously. And one of the things that worked really well for us was if we got an order at one location for a panel profile or a piece of trim or whatever that we didn't have access to, whether it was we don't carry that coil, we don't have that roll form or whatever, we could send quickly and quite easily intercompany transfer purchase orders that can immediately be processed on the other end and start the production process and all that. So I would say, the ability to communicate and quickly send emails over and make sure that that information was received and produced and ultimately, again, talk about trying to get our customers satisfied in as short a period of time as possible.
Was it mostly just that one kind of ERP system that you had used before Paradigm?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty integrated Excel spreadsheet, but it really didn't have any true database capability. So for us, as an example, we didn't have the ability to go back in and kind of track profitability at the customer level. So I'd say more of the management reporting side of things was what we were missing before, and we look forward to being able to. We also had to rekey a lot of things in our Excel program and then putting it into QuickBooks because they didn't talk. And one of the things that works out really well for us is the integrated general ledger and payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable process. All that is really pretty solid.
Paradigm's kind of taken over a few of those different systems that you were kind of putting together.
That's right.
Before. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, we combine Excel and our QuickBooks accounting functions.
Talking in terms of implementation a little bit, like actually making the switch and turn everything on. How did that whole process go? And how was working with the people at Paragon through that process?
Well, it went really well. We didn't know what to expect getting into it because, in previous lives, I've implemented different software solutions, and rarely is what you think you're getting the final product of what you get. And I would say, again, in different industries and different experiences, this, paradigm probably was closest to advertised in terms of, how the things that we were going to both have to do and then how it would work once we had implemented it. We set a pretty aggressive deadline for us to try to do it in about a 3.5 month period. And again, going from a fairly program that people understood how to use, it was very ingrained. We had very experienced people doing it. And moving to this new platform, we had between our implementation manager and our sales guy at Paradigm, they did a really good job trying to convey and communicate as much up front as possible. And really, wouldn't make any promises in terms of how quickly we could implement because they've seen this before. They did a really good job kind of helping us to manage our own expectations and make sure we weren't too aggressive or naive in the pace in which we could implement. And I think, doing it in a 3 or 4 month time frame for us was it turned out pretty well. It's like everything. There's certain things that you won't know how to do until you go live. And we did have a few things that we had to learn, pretty quickly in days 1, 2, and 3. But the support that we got was really great. I mean, we were on the phone 3 or 4 times, each of those first 2 or 3 days, and quickly got answers, quickly got the guidance and the help that we needed. And, and one of the implementations we did is our second one. We did it and took a record number of orders on the very first day we went live. And one of the site managers actually said, I think this was an easier day with Paradigm on day 1 than it would have been in our old system.
Wow. I'll tell you what, that might be the quote of the interview right there. So did you roll out Paradigm across all the different locations at the same time?
No, we knew we didn't have the bandwidth for that. And that would have, I think, really been a bad idea for us. We implemented one October 1st. Our second one came 2 months later, December 1st of last year. And then we did make the big decision to take our final 3 locations and do them all as of January 1st. It really made the most sense for us, new calendar, fiscal year, to try that. And it was a stretch. for us, but not for Paradigm. And they really, again, our implementation rep, I was surprised how many hours, how many vacation days they missed implementing as of 31/11, but did a great job supporting us through that. And it went as well as it could, given the fact that we're a very small company implementing, 60% of our locations all in one day. It went really well.
Since then, have there been any cost savings associated with, I guess, the work that is enabled by Paradigm or Paradigm itself that you've seen that you could speak to?
I wouldn't say, I will be candid. I wouldn't say there's any cost savings yet that we've received or seen. What we mostly have is information. We have data that we didn't have before. We have some granularity to understand our margins by different, between panels or trim or accessories or other ways we can kind of slice and dice it. And so it's going to give us some information that we can use to make better decisions going forward, whether that's purchasing decisions or pricing decisions or things like that. So I do think there'll be margin saving, margin opportunities down the road, but I wouldn't say at this point there's been any pure expense savings.
Sure. In terms of your like day to day at the different companies, has that extra information from Paradigm and that extra connectivity, have you seen that working? Can you talk a little bit?
Yeah, I would say so. One of the things that we probably have better information on is what customers owe us. For example, it's a lot easier for us to have a complete snapshot of accounts receivable from a particular customer. And so that would be one thing. I would guess that the site managers, each one of them has that better at their fingertips. And so as a lot of people in the industry, the second, third, fourth week of the month, you're making calls trying to make sure you're getting your checks in line and stuff like that. And I think the process is a much easier process for us now, having all the data that kind of rolls up at our fingertips regarding our customers' AR balances.
And probably just, in general, instead of using all the different systems you guys are using, kind of having to take things between all of them, whether that's the Excel, the QuickBooks, all that stuff, now just going to one thing. Has that been, have you seen that, I guess, on the C-suite level? Has that helped you as well as the people in the actual, on the floor?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot easier. We asked Paradigm and they helped us put together a dashboard. It kind of gives us some key figures. So we've got, some of our revenue and high level ratios between sales, cost of sales, gross profit, and things like that we can look at on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Look at our panel production at different profiles and make some decisions for future, do we need to add another roll former at a certain location to get a certain profile, or what's the volume then, things like that. So yeah, the dashboard really for me has been fantastic to have. I can, if I'm traveling, if I'm on the road or whatever, which I spend a lot of time traveling between our different locations, and pull over the side of the road. If I need to look at something, I can do that. I've got access to in one snapshot, can look at how orders are going for that day, or if there's an issue that we need to address.
And was that a custom thing that they built for you?
It was absolutely. Yeah. We're not the first person that they've done that for, but what we were looking at, things that were important to us were a little bit unique, and they very quickly turned that around for us, gave us something within a couple of weeks to be able to kind of say, hey, how's this look as a prototype? And we tweaked it from there. So
I guess, could you talk a little bit about working with the people at Paragon? I mean, you talk sort of implementation, now going to more of the ongoing support that they give. I don't know if there's anything that's come up since implementation that you've had to deal with them with, or just, I guess, ongoing, like you said,
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, we had our implementation rep. I'll name him because he really did a wonderful job for us, Jaden L. Martin. And unfortunately, we got to know each other pretty well during that process, implementing 5, and then we had a 6th one that we did on a joint venture that we've got with another Rollformer in East Alabama. But Jaden L. was our primary contact. We had the weekly calls leading up to it, and even post implementation for probably about 3 or 4 weeks apiece. He would still be our key guy to help us get through any post-implementation questions or near-term issues we've had. In fact, I was on the phone with him just this morning, and again, I can't speak highly enough of the job they did. They try to build an FAQ base out there that's robust, so that if you've got questions, that's kind of your first line of defense. And then after that, they've got live support and things like that. So I would say the support has been very, very good for us as we've rolled this out.
I guess, do you know, or could you tell me what modules or maybe like integrations you have set up within Paradigm?
Yeah, so we still are pretty basic in terms of the different modules that we use. We don't have in-house fulfillment, for example. So we don't use the there's a fulfillment well, we use the Fulfillment Pro tool at one of our locations, but the delivery and dispatch tool, we do not utilize that. So we are evaluating they've got an ACH function, and unfortunately we have different banks at each of our locations, and they don't always it's more of a bank thing than it is a Paragon or Paradigm thing in that regard. We're also looking at the data hub, and we set up connections between a couple of our locations to be able to kind of seamlessly transmit purchase orders and invoices back and forth and things like that when we're doing some intercompany ordering. And that, so far, that trial is going very well. We're going to evaluate that here going forward. So they'll tell you there's so much within just the core part of a Paradigm. And Jaden L was very clear. Make sure you've got everything done that you want to do with this part of it before you look at some of the bolt-ons that we have. And I appreciate that. I know, sales organizations, their job is to sell, and they weren't trying to push things on us before we are ready to absorb and to take advantage of those tools that that we will look at and hopefully implement down the road.
That's great to hear that, they want to kind of say, hey, get the base stuff down, and then you can add on some add-ons if you want to,
Exactly.
This is more of a question, I guess, for them with your feedback. Are there some areas where Paradigm can maybe be improved or customized further to kind of meet any requirements or requests or anything that you might have?
Of course, I'm drawing a blank now on something specific. The dashboard was one that we looked at. There's been some questions we've had, but I'll tell you what, they're always open to it. We've given them a couple recommendations. Forgive me for not remembering what those are, and they're like, yeah, we're thinking about doing that, or we're thinking about doing this, and so we'll just kind of add your name to the list of stuff like that. So you probably won't be able to use this in your video piece, but it's they have been very receptive to ideas that we have on why this works, or why maybe what they do, could we tweak it to do it this way, in terms of setting up some the workflow in receiving an order and sending it out to the production floor. They've helped us to both understand why they do it their way, and then we've given them some instances as to, well, maybe if you thought about looking at it from this perspective, this might help us or somebody else. And so I'd say there's been really good give and take in that regard.
I talked to a couple other people who have said, maybe some of the terminology is a little bit different that they use versus what we use, or like you said, thinking about it in one way versus another. So, any feedback that anybody has is helpful for them, because they can say, yeah, we've seen it before, or, we had someone with 6 locations. So we kind of know some of the interplays in terms of what you need between locations or that kind of thing. So, it gives them more opportunity to say, hey, we've done this before. What about this solution? I guess kind of my last thing wrapping up here is kind of looking forward right into the future. What are the next steps for you guys and the companies and locations you have? And how do you see Paragon and Paradigm kind of fitting into that vision?
Yeah, great question. I will say, anytime you do an ERP implementation, it's going to be a little bit disruptive. And we have taken our eye off the ball a little bit in terms of having to learn new concepts, new steps in order to fulfill customer orders, et cetera. And I think we're finally far enough along in that implementation where we're kind of back to where we were. And so what I'm looking forward to is the amount of customer data that we're going to have, and being able to understand, okay, Bob and Larry and Jim were great customers, and we haven't heard from Bob and Larry and Jim in a while. And, use that as a prompt to be able to go back out and say, hey, how are y'all doing? We sent you 3 quotes last week. What are you hearing in the marketplace? How can we help you do a better job in terms of getting, you competitive or things like that? So it's going to allow us to have much more proactive conversations maybe than we've ever really had in the past, because we've got this data. We can refer back very quickly to the level of business or the level of quote activity, and have follow-up conversations with our customers that hopefully demonstrate the care we have for them, the sincerity we have in wanting them to be successful, and how we can be a part of that.
I guess, this is your time. Do you have any final thoughts kind of about Paragon, the people there, Paradigm, anything else? Sounds like things are going pretty well so far.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, we're if we had it to do all over again, we'd do it again. We would probably keep the same implementation schedule that we did, which is pretty aggressive. And so in that regard, I've been in industries that track net promoter score. So, this is a 9 or 10 sort of thing, right? Would you recommend it? Yeah, I would recommend it for sure. I think they do a great job, and being specific to our industry is a huge key, huge plus over some of the competition that's out there, the other providers that really we were going to have to put a lot of square pegs into round holes to do. And so as we look to grow, as we look to add new locations, implementing Paradigm from day one is a no-brainer for us.
That's great to hear. I'm glad everything's going well, and that they're treating you well. Okay, I think we'll call it there. Appreciate your time, Eric. Thanks for chatting with me, and good luck with everything that's going on.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your time. We'll see you.